Hello. Oh, my kids are driving me crazy. Hi, it's Alexa Hampton. This is 52 Weeks Live. Today, I'm trying to fix my hair. It was just up. Today, we are going to start speaking to Paloma, who has the most amazing journey, a word I don't like using, but in this case, I will, the most incredible journey to share with you. Hello.
Hi, Alexa. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Look, I'm way too
doing
close to the
great.
camera. There we go. Um, you look beautiful as always,
Oh, so do you. I love your red lip, always for the red lip.
or bright pink, Um, so as I was posting about you, I discovered some of that your original job that then, the bowling pins started falling
Mhm.
to where you are now. And I am just so impressed by how this was a calling and how you came to it. And you didn't fall into it. Like, you made this happen.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in the power of intention and
Mm-hmm.
just trying things. If you love something, if you're passionate about something, life is short. It's too short to be miserable in something that doesn't feel like what you're meant to be doing with your life.
Yeah.
So you figure out a way.
So let's start with your first job. Was that
Sure.
even your first job?
Sorry.
Was that your first job, the thing I'm referring to?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to.
When
So
you were
there's
a
a lot of
teacher?
things. Yes, that was my
Okay.
first job. Yeah. Yes. So I actually studied foreign languages. That was my first love. I've studied, I guess, 4 different languages, and I'm somewhat fluent in French, completely fluent in Spanish, and fluent in Italian. So I actually majored in Spanish and Italian studies. And I did so because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was like, well, I love languages, and
Yeah,
I guess I can teach
nothing
for a
bad
while.
about having that as a skill.
Yeah, yeah, and it's come in handy, especially on job sites. Being fluent in Spanish never hurts, at least in Texas. Um, but I ended up teaching. I taught high school Spanish for 4 years and mostly taught at the AP level. And I loved the subject matter. I loved, not only the actual technical aspects of teaching a language and grammar, but also teaching about culture and art history and
Yeah.
the history of all of these amazing countries. And I loved working with the kids, but at the end of the day, it just didn't feel like what I was meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was contractually obligated to be there every day from, I guess, 7:15 until 3:30, and I was in my car at 3:30. I didn't really
Yeah.
go the extra mile, and
That
now,
is a sign.
yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't called. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, what is my true goal on this path? I don't want to be a principal. I don't want to teach at the
Mm-hmm.
college level necessarily. So I've got to do a little introspection and figure out, what I'm really called to do. And I felt creatively stifled. And so, long story short, eventually started my blog the last year, or the last summer before my last year as a teacher.
And what year
And
is this?
2007.
And that's extremely avant-garde, right?
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
at the
that
very
was
beginning.
it was the wild west of the blogosphere.
That's right. Very early on. And there weren't any design blogs. So what happened was we were looking to buy our first home. And of course, at that point, I'm thinking about design ideas and what to do with my
Mm-hmm.
house. And there just wasn't a lot of information online. And there were a handful of blogs, I will say, but they didn't really appeal to my sensibility per se.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of them at that time were um, sort of like that modern Nordic
Sure.
European sort of aesthetic, or there are a few things here and there in the States, but there just wasn't a lot out there. So I didn't set out with a plan. I mean, nobody knew what a blog was. Nobody knew the power of social media as we know it now. So I
Or the
really just
menace as we know it now.
exactly. So I just started writing about things that were of interest to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I've got to assume that your background with languages and with grammar and with, reading great books with your
Mhm.
students set you up in a wonderful way to write properly.
That's right. So I do pride myself in actually being a grammarian and an
I do too.
author.
I do
I
too.
wrote my own book. Not everybody in our industry does, and that's okay, but
I
I'm proud
didn't.
of the fact that I wrote
My
it.
hand was held completely throughout the whole
Yeah.
process.
Well,
It's
it's
amazing.
hard. It's a big time commitment, especially, when you're running a firm like you are. And I honestly, my editor's pushing me to do a second book, and I don't know if I have the bandwidth to write the manuscript myself the second time around. So I may rely on somebody to help me with that, and that's okay. But I pride myself in actually being a strong writer.
You care about language,
care about it.
and to be successful, as you started off with the blog, you have to tell a story. It has to be engaging. It has to grab you. And I would assume at the time there was some doing to get the photography. Were you allowed to just use things, or you had to really go the extra mile to get permissions? And
yes, so early on, I was of the mindset that it's a courteous thing to do to ask. And so at minimum, you reach out to the source that you're aware of and ask for permission and credit as much as you can. But obviously that evolved a lot as time went on. And now, honestly, like I still have my blog. I don't maintain it to the degree that I once did. I just don't have the time with my design business being busy. But I am almost trepidatious. I'm a little bit concerned about posting photography that isn't mine. I do think that that's limiting, but I know of countless people who have been sued over photography rights, and it's just kind of scary.
That is scary.
Mm-hmm.
That is very scary.
Yeah.
So you're doing the blog. It's getting a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. You're having fun and exploring that whole universe.
Right.
At what point did you then go into marketing?
So as I was figuring out what I was going to do with my life, I quit my teaching job. I knew that I wasn't happy doing that. I would cry every Sunday night to my poor husband.
Oh, no.
I didn't want to go back for another week. It was just so awful towards the end there. And so we agreed that I would quit and figure out what I was going to do. And so I was doing a lot of like freelance writing at the time, and little projects here and there with different brands like American Express. And this was sort of before.
And how did that even happen?
It just came to me. I didn't really like seek it out. There wasn't an influencer.
But they had read your blog and knew your voice, and okay, so it's like the power of language and a good writing skill.
Exactly. So I was doing that, and I was also tutoring a little bit on the side.
Uh-huh.
And one of the kids that I tutored in Spanish was the son of the owner of Visual Comfort, Andy Singer, who you obviously know since you have a line there. So that was sort of a big entree into what this path would be. I didn't know
that. That is so cool.
Yeah, so I tutored his son. I used to sit at his kitchen island and help him with his homework and whip him into shape. And at one point, Andy got to know me because I did that for a couple of years probably, and I was in his house like 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
And he knew about this other stuff that I was doing on the side. And one day I got a call from him, and he said, I've had this company. At this point, it might have been like close to their 30th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
It was a while ago, like 2010. I've had this company. It's grown really organically over the years, and I think it's time to start a marketing department. So they've truly just been very grassroots until then. And because you were with them at that time, you were one of their first licensors. But he said he'd been interviewing for a marketing director, and he was like, these people, they don't know how to market themselves. And I just haven't found anybody that I like. Would you consider interviewing for the position?
Okay, hold on a second. That is a fascinating little moment that bears repeating. Your appeal to somebody else to do their marketing was a reflection of your ability to market yourself.
Yes.
So that is, there's a lot of talk in our industry about the cobblers, and the cobbler's son has no shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps we are not a field in which that should be the case.
Right.
We should market ourselves. We should have our houses designed as well as we can afford, and that we can't just be outbound.
It's so important because you never know who that's going to reach or who is going to see that. And truly, if you're designing for other people, you need to understand, what that aesthetic, what that feels like, not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but also just from a comfort level. You need to be in it in order to be able to sell that to your clients.
And to continue the language parallel,
Exactly.
You have to be fluent.
Exactly.
If you're not fluent, how can anyone believe in you? If you
Right.
can't
And that
speak to it,
takes constant
even though you might
practice.
be the most talented person on earth, if you can't convey it, that's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So he hired you.
So he hired me, and I said, Andy, you do realize I have no formal marketing experience. I've never held a marketing position. I'm a teacher. You know that I'm tutoring your son.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but you know what's going on in there. And he doesn't, I don't think he remembers this because I've brought it up to him before. And he's like, did I say that? But he tapped on his computer monitor in his office and he's like, you know what's going on in there. So that was appealing to him at the time. You know, this was sort of the beginning of social marketing and really using digital media as a true strategy.
And it's interesting how there's a class of us who were cooking with steam as that happened, and just found ourselves in the path of attention.
Right.
You know, what a powerful thing.
Absolutely.
So how long did you work with him?
I was there for a couple of years.
And how did you see your job there?
So it was sort of broad reaching, I guess. So I worked really closely with both product development and their sales team on all of their new launches and was really involved in market. At that time, I remember our big introduction was Aaron. So Aaron Lauder was joining them as a licensor for the first time. So that was a big focal point, you know, developing that collection, getting all of those marketing materials together, the strategy for the press and whatnot. So that was super exciting, you know, to get to see someone like that I'd admired for her style for so many years and work with her team was really cool. And I did everything from helping develop, you know, the website and what that new iteration would be to running photo shoots for the catalog every year and just dealing with press requests and giving tours to all the magazine editors at High Point.
Yeah. So you had to really put your arms around the whole thing, which is a wonderful grad school as you're preparing to do your thing.
Absolutely. So, you know, I always say I don't have a formal education in design. I did not go to design school, but I have a really amazing sort of unorthodox education in design by all of these different avenues and these different facets of the industry that I've had the opportunity to explore.
Now, while you were doing this at Visual Comfort, did you already have your eye on the prize? Did you already know where you were going to go?
No.
Okay,
no, I would say that
so interesting.
Until recently, I haven't really thought that far down the road. So I was happy. I was very happy in that role. And I felt like I was learning so much and I was exposed to so many incredible creative people in our industry that have collections with Visual Comfort. I mean, it's a top talent, and to be able to work with people like you and to be exposed to others like, you know, Suzanne and Thomas and all of these wonderful, talented people, and Andy, you know, someone who's so smart at business.
Yeah,
that was
Andy Singer is unbelievable. And at that time, like, he was just, I remember, and I still don't understand what he was doing, but I know that he was changing all the software, and it was a Herculean
I remember that
event and effort, and changing his business model to stock more things. He was talking a lot about things that are not things I'm used to hearing about, and it was all very fascinating. And now people know Visual Comfort as this mega company, but he was, and it was never, as far as I knew it was never not a big company, but it's been amazing to watch him take over the world.
World domination,
and
one lamp at a time, right?
And you got to be a part of that. So
it was really cool. But towards the end, you know, I realized, because I'd been freelancing for a little while after my teaching career, and I realized, you know what, I kind of realized about myself that I prefer to do my own thing. Even though I enjoyed that environment, I learned so much. I still have people who are, you know, friends that work there to this day. I wanted to do my own thing. I realized that I'm better when I'm my own boss and when I'm in control of what's going on.
So are you your own boss?
I mean, I feel like I'm at the mercy of my clients most of the time, but
that's what I mean. Like, are we ever really our own boss?
Not really. And there's always someone to answer to. Yeah. So towards, I would say like maybe 6 months before I left, I started to think, you know what, I think maybe I'm ready to to try something else. And I've sworn, because I have so many friends who are designers and I knew so many people in the industry, I'd sworn that I didn't want to be a designer. I was like, I don't know that I'm interested in that. That sounds like a lot of headaches and a lot of babysitting and maybe more trouble than it's worth. But I started to get the itch. And so I had some opportunities come my way, some smaller projects, and then a pretty big one that sort of landed in my lap. And at that point, I decided to take the leap, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah. And what year was that?
That was 2013.
So that's amazing to think of what you have done. And that's like a real lesson. You didn't go into it without preparation. You had different preparation, but you had preparation, and some of it like vitally important in a non-obvious way, the marketing and the speaking. And in 7 years to look what you've done is pretty incredible.
Thank you, Alexa.
You've started your own company. You've continued, albeit, as you said, truncated your blog, the Style Files. Somebody just asked what it was called. So Style Files. You have written a book. You have a whole range of product at Williams Sonoma. And as far as I can tell, you're a child. So,
not quite.
This is a lot in 7 years. It's very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of hard work. And I think a lot of times from the outside looking in, it can seem like, oh, wow, all of this has happened for this person overnight. And, you know, not
everybody
everyone
knows
is supportive.
that doesn't. Nobody, yeah. I don't think anybody thinks that.
Right. But it's taken a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. And like I said, I've always just been of the belief that if you want to try something, if you want to do something, it's worth doing. You know, I'm not really afraid of failing, and I have had my failures, but you get back up and you learn from it. So, you know, I feel like you just have to do it. And not everybody agrees with that necessarily. For instance, at the beginning of quarantine back in March, I decided, you know what, I miss talking to people about design. I'm stuck at home. I'm not seeing people. I'm not going to events. I'll start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I did. And I mean, it's not the most polished production. It's just me. You know, we don't have a fancy editor or anything, but we've gotten some really amazing guests, which I think is a testament to, you know, the relationships that I've been able to build over the years in the industry. And the fact that I've made it a point to use my platform not only to promote myself and my business, but to promote others and to promote causes that are important to those of us in the business, whether they're social or business issues, you know, really having a sense of community. And that was another way for me to experience a sense of community and sort of pay that forward during this time. I don't know how long I'll maintain it. I mean, it is a lot to keep up with, and I feel like things are busier again than they were at the beginning of the pandemic, but it's been really fun. And you were a guest on it. So
yeah, I was, and I absolutely loved being, I love that I'm the only person in the list where there's the little E for expletive. Like Alexa Hampton, adult. Like, watch out, everybody. So here you are, you've decided, you've had people come to you and they want you to design for them. You're like, okay, this is it. I'm going to hang up my shingle. And, you know, obviously in my case, everything was already set up. So I didn't have to go through that. So I'm very fascinated and impressed by the process by which people begin. So how did you set it up? What was the roadmap in your mind?
At the time, it was just, I wanted to get work. You know, when you're just starting out and you haven't worked for someone else, you aren't working under someone else's name, you're starting from scratch. And so, you know, whatever would come my way, I was taking on. And I've since learned that, you know, you have to be more discerning and not everything is a fit for you. And it's just important for it to be a fit for you as it is for the client. But I was sort of learning as I went. And thankfully, again, you know, having that network of friends in the business was super helpful at that point.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'd had a successful blog and this big platform for so many years on which I had featured a lot of people, I think paid off in the sense that, you know, I think these people felt like, you know, she supported me in the past. And so when I had questions about how to write a contract or how do you do this or that, and these like really technical parts of actually running a business, people were very, very generous in return with me and advised me, you know, use Studio Designer for your accounting or do this or that. And that was invaluable because
So you
otherwise
use
I'd be completely
Studio
lost.
Designer. I use Design Manager Pro.
You do. Okay.
Which, but before that, I used something else.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, people like that. That's one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle, right?
Right.
Having
That's
all
huge.
that paperwork ordered for you.
Totally.
What are some of the things that you did not see that would be important that you realized were incredibly important,
Um,
if there is any?
so many things. So many things. I feel like I probably made so many mistakes. So many things were frustrating in the beginning. I probably left so much money on the table. I mean,
Sure.
just almost being shy to bill at the
Yeah,
beginning, you know,
I
being
do know. It's
trepidatious about, do I send another time billing bill? How are they going to respond to that? And
Mhm.
there were so many times that I gave away so much of my time and so much of my creativity.
So are you very strict with? Well, do you have a big team?
I have a small team. We're small but mighty. So I have 3 full-time
Mm-hmm.
women on the team. We have an office manager and 2 design associates / project managers. And then we have our bookkeeping team, of course.
What does your office manager do?
So that's a new position for us, and I'm really excited about it. She just started about a month ago. But she takes over basically like all of the billing, invoicing, money in, money out, HR sort of stuff that used to fall on my plate,
Yeah.
like, you know, time off and a little bit of like marketing stuff here and there. But it's really great because there are so many things, as you know, as a business owner that fall under your umbrella and that are sort of things that no one else really handles, but you do. And the busier you get, the more distracting those things are from the creative parts of the
Sure.
business, which is why people hire you. So it's been really good for us so far to have that.
Good.
Uh-huh.
I always, yeah, that is one of those things where that position is
Mhm.
something I think, and I've had one and I haven't had one and I have, but it's one of those things that it can be amorphous, but it is wonderful to have a kind of catch-all person who is giving that overview, but it's a luxury.
Right.
Because it is something when you're a small firm and you think in the early days when you're growing, you think, oh crap, I can't spend the money on that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that stuff, so I should do that stuff. But I do think
Right.
I think you're right. There's a point when really you're not doing anybody any favors by perhaps doing those things when
Mm-hmm.
you should be focusing on the things that nobody else can do.
Right. Well, and part of it is I realize this about myself. I'm very type A and I like to be in control of things. And it's hard for me to give up the reins on anything.
I'm type Q. As long as I can do like the creative stuff, like I don't want to do the paperwork at all.
Well, good for you. You've realized you've gotten to that point before I have. I'm hoping to get there.
Yeah, nobody wants me to do the paperwork. It's to everyone's benefit.
Yeah.
So, I'm also very interested in your Williams Sonoma line. Tell me about that, how that came about and what it is and where it's going.
Yeah. So
Everything.
that was a really fun collection that we did that came out last spring. And we collaborated with Williams Sonoma. We did this really great collection that was inspired by my sort of modern meets traditional take on design. And we did several categories of product: lighting, bedding, like decorative accessories and textiles. So it was great. It was an amazing experience. They have such a cool and talented team there. I mean, it's a big company, like a big,
And they've always presented
operation.
themselves very well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But they have, in-house design talent that's amazing. And so I describe like, I want to do this e-cot for these pillows and this embroidery. And they have these amazingly talented artists in their studio who, would hand paint exactly what I saw in my mind's eye. They would then render it. So it was a really cool experience. And then obviously to get to be represented in a retailer that's as well known and respected in our country, I guess, as Williams Sonoma was really fun.
It is really fun. And are you going to continue with them? And I mean, what's the future there?
It was kind of a capsule. I don't know that we'll do anything again.
Capsules are very exciting. They're real, on the one hand, like it's fun to have a great long relationship for sure. But capsules can be really fun because you can learn
right,
and then gear up for then the big commitment.
Exactly. And so that's sort of where I am now, where we did that. That was a really cool experience. And it was really great to be able to do things across various categories. And in 2021, I'm working towards this really amazing launch in the spring. I can't say who it's with
Yeah,
yet
but that's
because
exciting.
it's like, top secret or whatever. It hasn't been announced, but it's in one of my favorite categories in design with a really amazing design partner.
So actually, I was about to ask you, so now you can't answer it because you've revealed that
Mm-hmm.
it's with that category. But I was going to ask you, what did you find was most fun to work on?
With
Like
Lane Sonoma?
accessories? Yeah, with Wayne Sonoma. Was it accessories that really got you going? Was it
Yeah.
fabrics? What thrilled you the most?
I love the fabrics. I felt like that was really cool because that was completely original and, it felt like you were less limited. There were fewer
Mhm.
limitations in terms of doing a beautiful applique on bedding. They can basically do anything.
Yeah,
Whereas with other categories, you're sort of limited by what's capable, or what the factory is capable of doing, with materials and within the scope and all of that. But it was all great. Decorative accessories were great too, because I feel like that's something we all need and want. And that's something that I always feel is a little bit more limited out there. There's
yeah,
maybe fewer decorative accessories to pull from.
yeah. I personally want to do that again. I did it with
Mm-hmm.
Maitland Smith, and then when I moved to Theodore Alexander, I stopped doing it with Maitland Smith. But I do feel like that is a category where there should be more capsule lines
Right.
because the accessories have a um, a sunset.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many times. I think I've spoken on this before about like the three balls in the bowl. Um, you have to there's an appetite for it, but you can't
Mm-hmm.
just have it out there for a long time
Right.
because then the accessory in question gets exhausted. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
is asking if you have a favorite color to design around.
Oh, it really depends on the project. It depends on the home, but I'd say that colors that I go back to often, because I like them and because most clients like them, are probably blues and greens.
Yeah. How much do I feel that homeowners frequently say, a friend just texted me while we're talking, and I'm like, um, frequently ask to be pushed to broaden their color. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm of two, their color palette, and I'm of two minds about that. Of course, I would love to encourage them to step out of their lane, but at the same time, I'm always concerned about pushing them too far. That
Right.
I think there's a reason why people have their palettes. It's what makes them happy. It
Mm-hmm.
scares me to think that I'm going to push them out of enjoying their house.
Right.
So is that a concern, or do the people who find you, I mean, they must recognize the palette in which you, I mean, you have a range,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but do you think you're known for a palette?
Um, I don't know that I'm known for a specific palette. I think I'm known for using color in a specific way. I tend to use I use bold colors. I love color, but
Yeah,
I don't tend to do it in a way that's super saturated and super over the top. I mean, I'm certainly not designing like Renzo Mongiardino type of
sure.
rooms, as beautiful as I think
Yeah,
that is. It's a little bit more pared down, and it's more of an accent, I guess, in most cases. But I'd say most people, and I think maybe it's because of the work that they've seen or because most clients request it. It's sort of like what came first, the chicken or the egg.
yeah.
But it is those blues and greens and the softer palettes. I would love to
And
do.
pink. You
Yeah,
said, and
I love
you're
pink.
shamelessly feminine, which I love. No, I mean
Yeah,
that's it's great. And when it's
I love
feminine
it.
and glamorous, it's even better because
Hmm.
feminine, you might people might think that means doilies or something.
Right. No, no.
Like no, 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 no.
No, I would love to do, a beautiful sort of scarlet red room
Mhm.
or even yellow. Yellow is a room that people, or color that people rarely like, but I think it can be so energetic and so
Yeah,
fresh and interesting, but no one ever wants yellow. So I'm hoping that someday I get to
yeah.
work in these colors that people are more averse to.
I do feel yellow is deeply out of favor.
Hmm.
Though there are it's really the yellow of the 80s that's out of favor. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm desperate to do an egg yolk yellow room.
Yes. Yes.
Um, that would be lots of fun and
Hmm.
wouldn't feel wouldn't feel 80s to me.
Right.
Somebody wants to know your advice how to tactfully mix styles seamlessly. Like, do you mix mid-century modern pieces in with traditional pieces? And do you like doing that?
I love to mix, and I feel like my aesthetic is really all about mixing. It's about the juxtaposition, the tension that you can create between something that's completely traditional, a very classic silhouette, with a really graphic piece of modern art or some other type of modern element, maybe like a really cool chandelier or an interesting chair. You know, that to me is what makes rooms feel really layered and really
Yeah.
personal and
And
interesting.
timeless. You're not dropping an anchor where
Exactly, because you're not
everything is a
tied to
single.
one style.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Somebody
So
wants
in
me to,
terms of
yeah.
answering the question, I guess how to tactfully do it, I think it's really about the ratio. And I don't know that I have an exact sort of formula to share, but it's all about, you know, sort of tweaking the balance. It has to be a little bit more of one direction, and then you layer in things that are the opposite, whether that's, you know, modern or traditional, whatever,
Or color.
to give it a little bit of personality and interest and give it a little bit of edge. You know, every room needs some tension.
Yeah, some sharp points. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was speaking to somebody earlier this week who she was saying it's like cooking a stew that
Yes.
you pour in whatever. I mean, by the way, I'm like now out to sea because I don't cook. So I'm like, what was that metaphor? Like, you ruin it? What? It gets burned? No, she was saying, you know, you put in whatever you put in, and if it goes too far in one direction, the great thing about a stew is it's additive. You then put a pinch more of this, and you just keep building the flavors and building and building. It's a very handy metaphor I found.
That's a great one. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's very true.
Here somebody has another question. Is orange also 80s? No, I don't think orange
so.
is 80s at all. I think orange is very current.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So more dash than cash, go for it. So this is a good question. Somebody says, hello, Paloma. Going back to Williams Sonoma project, how long did it take you, and what part of the process exceeded your expectations?
I would say it was probably a good 2-year project in terms of, you know, developing the relationship, really putting together my design concepts and my inspiration for what this could be. And then you work in tandem with any partner that's
Sure.
manufacturing things for you or licensing things for you in terms of figuring out, you know, what's going to work best for their audience, their customer base, tweaking things here and there. And so there's a lot of back and forth. And I'd say that was probably part of what I enjoyed most about the process was having that collegiality and learning from their team, because obviously, you know, they know their audience, they know what works and what doesn't. So that was super interesting to me.
Yeah, it's also good to know who's good at what. When you have a collaboration, it's nice to have, you know, you're obviously there for what you're there for.
Right.
And there are other people that can supplement in areas that are not our typical point of expertise. Yeah, I do think that's fun, and it's fun to be. A lot of what we do is for people, and then a lot of it can be solitary as we come up with ideas. So a group think is very fun.
Right.
It's just enjoyable.
How do you prefer to work?
With people, and I love to. We'll do stupid things like we play a game. What's your favorite room? On every project, as the rooms get more and more beautiful, we're like, oh my god, I don't know what my favorite. What's your favorite? You know, we'll try to make games out of it. We'll fight. We'll do things like, you know, I know that if my draftswoman hates a piece of furniture that I've designed, that it'll be a huge hit. You know, I'm like, I know you have no sense, and whenever you hate it, it's good. So. We make fun of each other, like, ew, that's so disgusting, you should be fired and have your license to decorate suspended. You know, we just enjoy each other's company. Though having said that, while we travel, we never sit together. We, you know, when we're on an airplane, we scatter ourselves around the plane. So enough is enough.
There has to be some separation. I mean, we're with our work families so much. So you do need a little sort of me time, I guess.
But it's why it's so important to get it right. because you do spend so much time with them.
Exactly.
Now somebody has asked us if we think it's essential to have a degree in order to break into the interior design industry.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously no, because you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like you just, woke up and went poof into the
Right.
industry. So I think for a person that doesn't have this extraordinary arc that you've had, I think getting a degree or at least classes
Mm-hmm.
is a great thing.
I
And
100% agree. I'm a huge proponent of education, and I don't regret my path at all. If anything, if I could change anything, I wish that I would have figured out what I would end up doing with my life, what I would dedicate my life to earlier on. Because if I'd known this at a younger age, I absolutely would have studied design, and I absolutely would have gone on to work for other people. And so when people, a lot of people ask me this question because they know my personal story. And I do think that there's a caveat. I had a lot of experience and opportunities within the industry where I knew others who, were obviously very successful in the business. And so I had that as a resource. I wasn't just starting out of the blue,
right, it wasn't out of the
with
blue
no
at
one to
all.
rely on. And I basically established a network through my blog, and then I worked in the industry on the manufacturing side during my time at Visual Comfort. So there were all of those things that helped me, and also just having a platform and a voice on social media was super helpful in starting out, because there's a little bit of recognition, and that was part of how I was getting clients. So I think if you don't have those things, it would be really, really difficult. You'd be setting yourself up for a lot of challenges. And you always, you can learn so much by working for someone else. I wish that I had, just to learn the way that they do things and the business side of things. And honestly, you're making mistakes on someone else's dime rather than having it come out of your pocket. Those mistakes hurt in the beginning.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think I totally agree with you. If you don't have the hook, that you had a hook, I had a hook.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to just present yourself out of the blue. And I do think what you may not have gotten out of school, you as a teacher, certainly the way you approached your blog was an education. So you know all of the things that I would think, if I were hiring somebody, I would need them to know those things. Those are critical things to know about, and know those other designers and know their work. So that was a degree as far as I'm concerned. It sort of unnerves me when people say, who's Billy Baldwin? I mean, not that anyone says that, but when they, it's disturbing if there are huge pockets of unfamiliarity, not because it means that somebody's lazy. It means, wouldn't you be interested, and you'd find out. So yeah. And I think also the marketing part of your background is really interesting, and it's something that we all can learn from. That is an essential part of our job, right?
Well, it's huge. And especially now, as the landscape has changed so dramatically in the last 10 years in terms of publishing. And if you think about, the way that a designer made a name for his or herself 10, 15 years ago, it was, primarily the goal was to get published.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily have to have a website, and they certainly didn't have to have a social media presence of any sort in order to be successful and have a lot of great projects come their way and a lot of opportunities. But the landscape is so different now. And understanding how to market oneself, how to share one's voice is so important. And what's really cool is that we all have the same tools at our disposal now. It's a matter of, do we know how to use them?
Yeah. And to not be embarrassed, to ring that bell about yourself. I always joke that I have a bell and a sandwich board on at all times, like decorator for hire. But it's an essential part. It really is essential, because it's great that we all can be out there. It just means we have to, the challenges have shifted. But I think being able to write and to speak are two of the biggest things for people to focus on as they take classes. So back to that question, I'm on a trustee of the New York School of Interior Design, and I think it's, I usually hire people who have gone there.
Right.
And, maybe not the degree if you can't for some reason, but definitely the classes. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Why not? I mean, and I think what it boils down to, when you made the comment about somebody potentially not knowing who Billy Baldwin is, and there are plenty of kids out there who don't know, people who go to 4-year design programs and who have every technical skill that you can imagine, they're not being taught the ins and outs of actually running a business and having a profitable operation. And
yeah, that you have to learn by doing.
Right. And they're not being taught about the great decorators and designers of the last century. And that comes, I think, that's a personality trait at the end of the day. That's a curiosity, a natural curiosity, a desire to learn, a desire to expand one's knowledge base and understanding of these people who came before us and how, history sort of repeats itself, or what things have been around
the lessons
forever.
that they are teaching us simply by looking at their work. So Masks by Arabelle, hello, darling, asks, what can you do if you can't afford classes? Well, that's what you could do. You can be an autodidact, and you can plug from my father's book. He has a great book called Legendary Decorators of the 20th Century. You go find a blog that you can read that's wonderful, like yours, like Peak of Chic. Those are, the internet has really helped.
There's so much information out there. There's so much information, and you just have to be willing to look for it and truly have a desire to learn. There's a million amazing books, watching films. I mean, there's so many things. We're surrounded by design. It's that curiosity, and maybe intern for someone. If you can't afford to go to school, but you take it upon yourself to learn as much as you can, if you're able to perhaps offer to intern with someone part-time and learn that way, that's great too. That on-the-job experience.
There are many ways to skin this cat. Like if you have a job and you want to do this, like you can take courses online, you can as you said, read their amazing books, and there are amazing resources on the internet. And that way you can do it and still make, still put food on your table.
Right.
Because it's, for those of us who started off really young doing it, we were at the mercy of our parents' largesse. I was working for my father and he was paying me pennies, but he was paying my Amex bill.
Yeah.
So,
well, there you go.
I'd look at my colleagues and think, well, my father's not paying their Amex bill. Like this is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
And I think that has changed a little bit for the better. Because, well, for example, interns need to be paid now.
Right.
But like many jobs that are in great demand because they are creatively fulfilling, like acting, there's some lean years before they get better. And you can always go back to a lean year anyway. Totally.
And, to that point, you have to be willing to sacrifice. I don't know of any creative industry where someone's going to suddenly, amass a ton of wealth in the first few years. You have to put in the sweat equity. And this is one of those industries where, because it's creative, unfortunately, you're not going to get paid a ton of money fresh out of school. You're going to have to pay your dues. A lot of that happens.
And you also have to be incredibly cautious, this time being like the best example. There are moments in time, though nobody could have foreseen this, where, it can be scary.
Right. Yeah. And the business ebbs and flows. Sometimes you have almost more than you can handle on your docket, and other times you're wrapping up projects and thinking, okay, what's next?
Yeah. Totally.
So part of that, part of it comes with experience, just figuring out how much you need to keep in your pipeline to stay busy and to make sure that the business is continuing to grow and move forward.
And keeping interested in it, so that when those hard times hit, yes, totally, Arabella, COVID has made all of us think about our business and how to sustain it and how to be safer going forward. And I don't think there's ever a point, even for the most famous designers, I don't think there's ever a point where they're safe. which is great. It's a great, we can all feel like we're in this together. But I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought because I'm reading and talking. I should shut up. But if you keep curious and keep interested in your field, it can feed you spiritually in those times when it's not feeding you food.
That's so true. Yes, it feeds us in different ways. It really does.
Somebody said, how do you handle others being, quote, inspired by your work to the point of copycatting? Par for the course in a creative field, and curious how you deal with it.
I think there's a very big difference between being inspired by something and outright copying it. And I think it gets a little muddy these days with so much visual inspiration online. I do think that it's important to sometimes step away from the noise of social media and your Instagram feed and sort of sit with your own creativity and decide, what it is that you want to do with your own home or a client's home or whatever it is without being too influenced by external factors and other things that you're seeing. I see a lot of sameness. I mean, I certainly do. Whether people are copying, I don't know that people copy my work, but I do see things on Instagram where there's like very strong parallels. And I'm like, oh, this looks like so-and-so's work, but it's someone else's. And it's hard to know whether that's intentional or not. I mean, I think if you're copying every last detail, well, that's an issue in the sense that, you didn't necessarily birth the idea, but if it's an element or a color palette that you were inspired by, I don't know. It's a hard one. I feel like it's a great issue.
As a child of, I'm always looking to my father's work. I'm always looking to heroes. And I think copycatting is only really, I feel like everybody copies everybody, and it's not copying, it is inspiration, unless you are really inventing something.
Right.
Because like, what, do I own the color purple? No. And everything I do has sort of like, a historical impetus. So
exactly.
I didn't invent it to begin with. But if you are, really an avant-gardist and you have truly owned that look, which is a hard thing to do, then I don't think you can really claim originality. I think about this all the time. I'm not sure. I think originality in quotation marks is the goal. Like, we work for people. We need to make their houses beautiful for them.
Yeah.
They don't say, come make it so original. Like, what are you gonna do? Have a chair and a poop and a, like, weird or original for the sake of original always troubles me. Like, we are helping people creating their so Masked by Arabelle, give me, without naming names, or no, not Masked by Arabelle, somebody else who asked this, like, what's an example like of a full-on copy? What does that mean? Like you use the exact same fabric. Like, sometimes you have a client who comes in and says, I want this.
No, I won't do that, because I do have clients. Obviously, I ask clients to show me things that they're drawn to, what they're inspired by.
And it's a really important thing.
Exactly. Whether it's from, is there a room in my portfolio that you love, or, clippings from magazines, whatever. But I have in the past, it's been a while, but I have had someone ask me to execute something almost exactly. And I've said no. I've said, we can take this idea.
We can make it for you.
And make it our own, but I'm not going to execute someone else's work. You don't need me for that. And that doesn't sit well with me, because I don't want to copy someone else's work.
That means you're a purchasing agent.
Exactly. And we're designers, not shopping assistants or personal shoppers.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Yeah, I think everyone is agreeing with that. And now Sally, who asked us, like, shut up, you answer my question.
Okay, good.
How often do you say no to a client who wants to hire you?
How often do I say no?
Yeah.
It really has to work for me on a lot of levels these days. We're fortunate to be really busy and to get to work beyond Houston where I live. So, for instance, right now we have projects in Chicago and one on the Jersey Shore and in Atlanta and the Dominican Republic, which is so fun just to get to work in different vernaculars, different architectural styles and in different locales because the light is different and the landscape is different. All of that sort of informs what ends up happening in the house. But it's really about fit. I have to be excited about the house. I want to be excited about the people. It's important that it feels like we're going to have good chemistry and a good rapport and respect one another, that I get the feeling that, they're going to respect the process and what I bring to the table. Because we're in this with our clients in some cases for years,
Sure.
at minimum of a good year. And in most cases, at least a couple of years before you're completely done. So that's really important. You want to enjoy one another and the process of working together. It's important more to me now than it was in previous years. The budget has to be at a certain level in order for me to feel like I can do the kind of work that I want to do.
Sure.
So we do say no if something doesn't meet that budget requirement, or if I just am getting kind of a weird vibe, or they seem like maybe they'll be extra demanding or incredibly indecisive. I find that the indecisive clients are some of the most challenging to work with because they can sort of waffle back and forth a lot. So that's what it boils down to for me is, are they nice people?
Yeah.
Does the house have, good bones? Is it something that I'm excited to work on? Do I feel like I can wrap my arms around it and make something cool out of it? And can we make money?
Yeah. 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 I had a friend once say to me, they just want a white room. I'm so bored by that. I don't want to do a white room. And I was like, what do you mean? You can look on the internet and see some of the most beautiful rooms or white rooms. Like, this is your chance to go for it. I think sometimes you just have to remind ourselves just to have fun, to dig deep and make it the most fun we can have. Because the more fun we're having and thinking and dreaming, for sure, the end product will be more meaningful for the homeowner.
It's so true.
It'll delight them if they can feel the enthusiasm.
And you want people who, are excited about what you do and are familiar with your work and really want when you get the impression that they're just calling a bunch of different designers and sort of seeing who can get them what they want most immediately or for the lowest flat fee or lowest hourly rate, then that's not necessarily someone you want to be working with.
No, though I appreciate that we all have, our needs. If somebody needs to do it fast and less expensively, I totally get it. So what, in addition to the exciting news, which is happening when did you say?
This spring,
which I'm thrilled to hear about when I do hear about it. What else is next on the horizon for you? Either it's happening or things that you really want to have happen?
Well, I have to get to work on that second book, but COVID sort of threw a wrench into all of that because now all of my projects are going to take longer to complete. So I was supposed to be working on, I have a concept for it. I was supposed to be working on an outline and I just haven't gotten around to it. And honestly, the projects are going to take 6 months to a year to complete, longer than originally thought. So I'm kind of like, well, we've got time. So that's on the horizon at some point. I'd love to do, like I said, I have this product launch coming up, which I'm super excited about. And I'd love to do more of that. I've found that that's a process I really enjoy. And I love sort of figuring out things that I feel are maybe missing from the market or being inspired by in normal life, things that I find on my travels, and incorporating all of that. So I'd love to do more of that, but no solid plans aside from this thing that I mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited to see it and I'm so glad to speak to you.
Likewise.
I love your considered approach. You're not, you're thoughtful and, nothing wrong with that. That is like a very important part of the process.
Thank you, Alexa. That means a lot to me.
I've got my dear friend Trudy giving me lots of love. I look forward to seeing you. I hope at Market in the spring. Will it be at Market?
I hope so. If we have a vaccine coming now, so hopefully that means more people are comfortable traveling.
But everybody don't travel now.
Yeah, don't travel now.
Don't
Wait,
travel now.
don't travel now so that Alexa and I can go to market and see one another in April.
No, don't travel now so everyone can be safe.
Yes,
And we will see each other soon.
I hope so.
All right. Thank you, Paloma.
Thank you,
Kisses.
Alexa. Okay,
Lots of love.
bye.